Hello, everyone. Welcome back to day number 15 of our Cybersecurity Awareness Month Tips and Tricks. Today's topic is why those cloud apps need backup too. So you've moved out to the cloud using Office 365 G Suite for your mail or perhaps something else. You might have your accounting out in the cloud. You may have a line of business app, something that's specific to your industry. If you're a service industry, you may have your dispatch and everything out in the cloud. So hopefully you've already reviewed those contracts to see who owns the data. That's one of the most important things, just to confirm that you, in fact, do have entire rights to the data which you put out there. Because if you don't, then those parties can use and sell that data. And it's a situation you don't want to get into. So it's a little bit of an aside, but an important one to make sure you always review any cloud contracts. Now, talking about contracts and why I'm bringing them up, almost all of these contracts have some sort of kind of policy, if you will, or a little exception in the actual contract, which is kind of like a hold harmless kind of piece, which means, whatever happens, the data is your data and we're not responsible for it, which means if Office 365 perhaps crashed in such a way where your data was not be able to be recovered, they're not responsible for it. If, let's just say, QuickBooks Online crashed and they have a hold harmless clause inside that contract, you could potentially lose your data. So you want to check out your contracts to see exactly what they are responsible for. And even if they are saying that they are responsible for it, if they ever have a material breach, think about this. If they ever have a material breach where all of that data gets, let's say, ransomed, and they cannot pay the ransom for whatever reason, and that means that they can't get the data back and they can't get backups back, well, where does that leave you? A guarantee is almost worthless at that point because they're just going to be out of business. There's no way that they're going to be able to sustain a massive breach like that. Insurance is just not going to be able to cover it. So these are all things that you want to think about and why you always want to have your data local. Now, in that example, let's say your line of business app goes out of business, but you still have all of your data. You may not be as in bad of shape as you think you are. At least you have all of your data. At least you can prove things in a court of law if you ever needed to, in terms of who's paid, not paid, etc. And you could also take that data, and probably you'll have some pretty understanding competitors to that company who'd be very willing to pick up that data and import it into their systems. So, you may take a tragedy and just convert it into a couple of weeks of downtime as everything's kind of brought back online. Now so that's kind of like the what if scenario, the horrible scenario. But what is probably more probable to happen in the Office 365 or G Suite area is that unauthorized access happens where an application is allowed to run against your data, which encrypts it. This is a popular thing to do, especially in Office 365 on the email side. You can actually kind of get admin privileges one way or another, and then basically run an app and ransom the whole thing. And Microsoft's not responsible to get that data back. So you have to keep that in mind. So that's why these cloud apps, it's absolutely essential that you have a good backup plan in place. And even if they say that they are backing up everything, dig a little bit deeper, press a little bit harder, ask them what the backup plan, ask them how long it is in between testing. Ask them what the last 2 or 3 tests look like. And if they can't give you answers, you may want to look at other companies, because if they can't give you answers readily and they don't really cite any type of competitive issue for that, then the reality is they may not even be doing it. So you have to watch carefully in that pre-sales process. And undoubtedly, your salesperson is not going to know. They're just going to say, yeah, it's all done in industry standard format. You really have to press them a little bit to make sure that it is actually done in industry standard format, because really there is no such thing as industry standard format when it comes to this stuff. So you really want to push on that and get that. But in the interim, as long as you own the data, you should have access to the data. If you have access to the data, you certainly should be able to back it up. Now, Office 365, G Suite, all of these products we talked about, they all have many third-party applications. You just have to be a little bit careful to make sure that all of your data is actually backed up in the cloud hemisphere. So example of this is some of the providers, even to this day, for backup for Office 365, have issues with email groups, mailboxes, Teams was another issue. I think most of them come up to speed, but Teams and groups are probably the two things you want to ensure that are being backed up if you're using those features. SharePoint as well, make sure there's no type of limitation inside of SharePoint. I know, again, we've got some backup providers we've seen that have limitations on how deep the file structure can be. So if you have a lot of directories and you like to put things inside of things, you just have to verify that you can get to that stuff on a test restore. Oh, talk about test restores. Same as on-premise backups. You need to have a backup plan, again, because you need to understand where your data lives, where the risk is, and then you could determine how often you should really test against using that risk as kind of your litmus paper on how often a full-blown test should be, because you want to make sure that you are, again, getting all of your data and it's easily accessible. It also gives you the numbers that you need for proper disaster response plans. In other words, the CEO comes to you and says, oh, we just lost everything. We have it all on backup, right? And then you say, yes. And they go, well, how come I can't access it right now? And, you really can't say, I don't know how long it's going to take. What you can say is, well, the last time we tested it, it took 2.5 hours for everything to come online. So you need to have those answers as a company to be part of your response plan. So everyone's kind of operating on the same page and no one's going crazy during an actual disaster, trying to figure things out on the fly, because any guess is going to be wrong. That's just the way it works. So these are just a few reasons of why you need to make sure that your cloud apps are backed up. And again, Microsoft offers some of this. I think some of the QuickBooks Online's providers offer it. And as long as it's done properly, you could be okay with that. Personally, I like to see it done through third party, just because there's a different set of people's whose necks you can grab and wring to get your things back online quickly. Whereas where everything's with a single vendor, unless they have very strict protocol in place, you have no idea what they're actually doing underneath the covers. And they could just be charging you and giving you lip service, because at the end of the day, if they have a massive breach, they're out of business. So they might be kind of counting on that as their policy of, well, if it all goes down, we're going to be out anyway. So why invest the time and effort into managing that piece of it? And we see that, but often, not that they go out of business, just that they don't really have a plan. As we push harder and harder and harder, the material that we get back from them is less and less convincing that there's a strategic plan to test and to restore, do those test restores on the backup. So just keep that in mind, and just remember that's your data out there. That's everything, right? So protect it with everything you got. Backup is critical. Well, I hope this didn't scare you too much, but it's just something that's our new reality as we move things to cloud. Remember, cloud is really just someone else's computer. At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's someone else's computer. So make sure they're doing right by your data. So a little bit about, we had an awesome webinar today on that very first piece, which was the 90-minute. We had a lot of great questions. We're going to be posting that up. I'm hoping to have that webinar up for replay either tomorrow, which is our Friday or Saturday or Sunday. We'll get that up in the next few days. And for those of you that missed it, and if you haven't signed up, you could definitely sign up for the next two. And you can also get that replay as soon as it comes up. So the link will be down in the comments below. Just go out there and sign up. You'll get a link to that replay as soon as it's available. And then you can join us for our second webinar, which is going to be a really good self-assessment opportunity, as well as some follow-up on the first one. And then our third one's our giant hackathon. We're going to show how things are hacked, including the one where you would need to restore from backup because your Office 365 has been encrypted. So I hope you're going to find those really helpful and educational. Like I said, we had a great session today. Again, sign up for those in the comment below. And well, until next time, stay safe, stay online, and have an awesome day. So long.